Hello guys, this is part 2 of my 2-part series on the Professional Craftsman's Workshop. I put this series together mostly for the younger craftsmen who are trying to get started and don't know how to organize their tools and their equipment or what tools they need. I was fortunate enough to be able to get into this Craftsman's Workshop here today and take a look at some of his equipment. So I really want to thank him for that. Before we get into the shop itself, I must tell you that it is an active workshop. It is being used right now. The craftsman is at work. So we need to kind of tread lightly, and I will. You're going to hear some sounds that you've never heard before. There's some very specialized equipment in here that was all put together by this craftsman. But more than anything, I want to show you how a craftsman organizes his tools, his shop, and how he makes everything come together to combine knowledge and experience. And the end result is what we're going to see here today. So be ready to be impressed. So let's take a look at his workbench. Look how organized this workbench is. Now it's not an ordinary workbench, and I'll show you what I mean later. Let's move on to this tool here. I'm not even going to tell you what it is because it's way too complicated for the amateur. But it's easy to see that when it's not being used, everything is stored properly. The electrical cord is wound up nicely, and if he does need to use it, he can put this thing in operation in a matter of minutes. Now, I mentioned that the workbench was not just a workbench. Let's look at it a little closer. This workbench has a hoist to hoist tools up onto the bench. This is what separates the average weekend hobbyist from the professional craftsman. And again, everything is organized, everything is in its place. Are you getting the same feeling I'm getting? There's somebody here that knows what the hell he's doing. Notice the light with the articulating arm. You won't see that in the amateur's workshop. The space in this workshop is utilized to perfection. There you have a wood lathe, you have a planer next to it, and you have a motorcycle to the left of it. And then you have wood stacked in between. That is a perfect example of how to use a small amount of space. This piece of equipment here is probably foreign to the young fellas that are just starting out. That's a CNC machine. Notice the tools, how they're organized on the end of the CNC machine. Each tool has its place. Excuse the camera shake there, I just tripped over some tools on the floor. This piece of equipment here, you can see it's pretty high tech. That's a 3D printer. As mentioned in my last video, every good shop has a sink, easily accessible. Every good shop has 2 doors, and they're not blocked by any equipment. Safety is the most important aspect of any good craftsman's workshop and good practices. Notice the grinder. The 3D printer. I don't expect you to know what any of this stuff is. It's way too complicated for the average young fella starting out. But you can see that the wiring and everything is put together perfectly. These tools are for the very advanced craftsman. Oh, excuse me, I tipped over some more tools. This professional has been operating for a very long time. Most of his tools are very high quality. Harbor Freight or better. You can see he's putting his CNC machine through its paces right now. Notice he's got a standby light in case the power goes off. Good supply of nuts and bolts. Everything's clean and in its place. That's the key to a real professional. We're very fortunate to get to look at this Craftsman's workshop. For you less experienced fellas out there, I know this is pretty daunting. And it should be, because this is some very sophisticated equipment. It's made out of the best material. We're really getting to see some quality work going on here by a real professional. It's just the type of place you'd want to just sit and stay all day and just watch this craftsman do his thing. It's not often that you get to see perfection, but this definitely is perfection. Notice the drawers are closed, extension cords are not laying around. Everything is right where it should be. There's many thousands of dollars of Harbor Freight tools sitting here, but each one has its job and its purpose. And in case of an emergency, he could exit this place really easy. All he would have to do is move a few tools, move the pressure washer, and he's out the back door. It's very obvious to the novice that when you see this place, you realize how well organized it is. Of course, it took many years to get to this point for this craftsman. This is not something that happens overnight, as I'm sure you realize. And of course, this is a very sophisticated craftsman. He's got a computer in his workshop. Notice he has a crescent wrench laying next to the computer in case he has to do some work on it. Everything in this workshop is laid out perfectly. I think if one looked in the Webster's dictionary under Rube Goldberg, they would probably see something very similar to the things you see here today. And as I mentioned before in my previous video, organization, cleanliness, and ease of access, and this workshop has that all. It's also important that the craftsman stays calm while he's working, keeps his hands steady. A bottle of wine is a very important thing to have lying around, to take a swig off of every now and then, to keep those hands steady, keep that work coming. This craftsman here is a very patriotic craftsman. You can tell by some of the work he has done with his 3D printer. Very impressive, very impressive. It's also very important that the craftsmen stay hydrated So keep beer lying around for hydration. Keep the wine for steady hands. This is very important. Alcohol is something that every workshop should have. This workshop is so organized that there's even room for a full-size Harley Davidson motorcycle in it. I hope you've enjoyed watching this expert craftsman's tour of this workshop today. Thanks for watching. Adios.